The apple you picture in your head, that uniform, unblemished red or green sphere sitting in the produce aisle, is a lie. It represents a highly manufactured, tiny fraction of what this fruit can actually do. Hidden away in remote test orchards and century-old root cellars, there are apples that look like they belong on an alien planet. Driven by human engineering and wild genetic chance, they possess a massive variety of flavors, colors, and textures. This 3D grid illustrates our ultimate apple catalog, containing 16 of the strangest and most important varieties in existence. Curious, examining these extremes reveals the hidden scientific and historical forces that shaped the modern food supply. We start with the titans of the grocery store. The Red Delicious was discovered as a random chance seedling on an Iowa farm in the 1870s. Over the 20th century, growers continuously bred it to deepen its red color and thicken its skin for long-distance shipping. That process allowed it to be stored for months, but it stripped the apple of its original acidity and depth, leaving the modern version famously dry and flavorless. Across the world, the Granny Smith also grew by accident. In 1860s Australia, Maria Ann Smith found a young seedling sprouting in a compost pile. The seeds likely came from a discarded French crabapple, giving the Granny Smith its dense flesh and sharp, citrus-like acidity. That intense acid prevents it from browning quickly after being cut, making it a staple for fruit platters. In the 1930s, a New Zealand orchardist bred the Gala to capitalize on a growing consumer preference for mild, low-acidity, highly sweet fruit. It eventually overtook the Red Delicious in production and earned its name after a royal visit from Queen Elizabeth II, fit for a royal occasion. The Fuji, developed by Japanese researchers crossing two American varieties, is known for a strange botanical anomaly. As you can see in this animated cross-section, the core can fill up with a sugar called sorbitol, creating a clear, glassy appearance known as water core. That concentrated sorbitol makes the center taste intensely sweet, like pure honey. Many growers view this as a defect because as the sugar crystallizes, the fruit breaks down faster and its storage life drops drastically. But for consumers eating it fresh, the flavor is exceptional. Then there is the Honeycrisp, developed at the University of Minnesota. The cells inside a Honeycrisp are significantly larger than in other apples. When you bite down, those massive cells burst violently instead of compressing, releasing a flood of juice and a uniquely loud crunch. These familiar supermarket varieties represent survival of the fittest in modern commercial agriculture. They dominate shelves because they excel at specific, highly profitable traits, like a long shelf life, durable skin, or uniform texture, often at the expense of pure genetic variety. If you step outside the commercial supply chain, you find the visual rebels. The pink pearl, developed in 1944 by a self-taught California breeder, hides a bright pink to red flesh underneath a plain, pale skin. Its flavor leans highly tart, tasting more like grapefruit or raspberry than a standard apple. That vibrant pink color comes from natural pigments called anthocyanins, the same antioxidants you find in dark berries. In most apples, these pigments are strictly limited to the skin, but in a few rare varieties, they bleed completely through the internal flesh. We can trace this rare trait back to an ancient wild ancestor from the mountains of Central Asia, the Nidzvetskiana. Almost every tissue of this tree is saturated in purple and red, from its crimson flowers to its dark bark. The fruit itself is highly astringent and incredibly unpleasant to eat raw, but its genetics serve as the foundation for almost every modern red-fleshed apple. Color adaptation also works as a defense mechanism. First found in Maine around 1790, the black Oxford develops a deep purple skin bordering on pitch black. That incredibly thick, dark skin acts as a protective shield, allowing families to store the fruit in cool cellars for over 6 months without rotting. Down in the Ozarks, you find the Arkansas Black. At harvest in late October, the fruit is extremely firm, closer to the texture of a hard pear, and coated in a waxy, polished surface that picks up a gloss resembling lacquered wood. Biting into it fresh off the tree is a sharp, fiercely tart mistake. But if you leave it in a cool cellar until February, the internal cells slowly break down. This ages the apple like cheese, softening the flesh, mellowing the harsh tannins, and converting the raw starch into a complex flavor profile with notes of dark cherry, anise, and wine. Not all preservation methods look pretty. The knobbed russet, one of the oldest surviving cultivated varieties, is heavily covered in a thick, gray, corky layer. Supermarkets reject it for being visually rough, but underneath those lumps is a crisp, sweet flesh with a slightly nutty flavor. On the more elegant side, we have the Kandil Sinap. Its name translates to oil lamp, referring to its tall, narrow shape. Grown extensively in imperial Ottoman gardens, the ruling court favored this elongated fruit for its fine texture and incredibly clear, delicate juice. From corky protective layers to pitch-black skins that slow down decay, these bizarre physical adaptations were vital tools for survival and winter preservation long before modern refrigeration existed. Other heirloom apples were bred exclusively for extreme culinary profiles, completely ignoring physical looks. Take the Ananas Rubinette, a tiny yellow European heirloom dating back to the 1500s. Its sharp, lively acidity delivers a potent mix of pineapple, lemon, and pear, giving deep flavor to old-world ciders and desserts. In France, the Calville Blanc d'hiver looks lumpy and slightly misshapen, but it has reigned as the country's finest dessert apple for 400 years. It boasts a staggering 4 to 5 times the vitamin C of a typical commercial apple, creating a rich, honeyed, and faintly spicy sweetness. In America, the Esopus Spitzenberg earned its reputation as Thomas Jefferson's favorite dessert apple. He planted the trees extensively at his Monticello estate, prioritizing the fruit for its dense, chewy texture and a bold, tart snap that leaves a lingering taste of cinnamon, clove, and nutmeg. The Gravenstein is one of the oldest apples grown in the Western world, spreading to the California coast by 1811 via Russian fur traders. As this vintage poster highlights, its highly aromatic, tart profile proved so valuable it served as the foundational ingredient for early commercial apple juice empires. Finally, we have the Rubinette. Bred in Switzerland in the 1950s, it is widely considered to have a mathematically perfect balance of sugar to acid. But achieving that flavor requires intense farming labor. The trees are weak, highly prone to disease, requiring farmers to manually thin the blossoms heavily to coax out a single perfect apple per cluster. These fragile, difficult-to-grow heirlooms prove that the apple is capable of a culinary complexity that rivals fine wine, completely divorced from the demand for visual perfection. Looking back at this catalog begs a question. Why do organizations dedicate massive amounts of time, money, and land to keeping ugly, hard-to-grow, or wildly sour apples alive? Facilities like the National Fruit Collection maintain these living archives because they act as a vital genetic safety net. If a catastrophic disease ever targets the exact genetic profile of our few commercial titans, the traits needed to breed a resistant replacement are waiting in those ancient, obscure heirlooms. The pristine, uniform fruit you drop into your grocery cart represents just one small, highly engineered branch, but it survives because it is anchored to a massive, wild, and incredibly resilient genetic tree.